BBC have released a new documentary on Bill Cosby. In it, I was completely surprised to hear this line of a non-binary sex therapist speaking in this documentary, saying, create a sex-positive world where someone is able to pay a conscious woman to come and be drugged for a fetish for having sex with unconscious people. How is this empowering to women, Darren? Is this the product of feminism? Is this what we're teaching young girls? This is the enlightenment. This is the pinnacle of female empowerment. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly, Jess. I mean, if I wanted to hear such unadulterated filth like that, I would watch some OnlyFans channel or something like that, right? I don't tune in. Well, I don't tune in to the BBC, but if I did tune in to the BBC, I'm pretty certain I wouldn't be expected to hear rhetoric like that about so-called consensual permissive acts that which are anything but that. How can someone consent to what you're doing to them when they're unconscious? It's unconscionable. And I honestly think, Jess, right? You look at everything the BBC are doing right now. You've got Radio 2's Ken Bruce being booted off the Beeb. He was immensely popular, is immensely popular, and he's probably been booted out because he committed the cardinal sin of being a white straight male over the age of 50. But right, it says something about the BBC's priorities, doesn't it? That they're more than happy to publish this morbidly obese person speaking about, apparently they're non-binary or something like that, Jess, this sex therapist speaking about creating a sex-positive world in which people are free to pay conscious women to be drugged in order to release the fetishes of having sex with the unconscious, for perverted men and women to enjoy themselves with the freshly drugged corpse in front of them. I mean, honestly, Jess, the BBC refused to platform conservative voices, but will happily platform somebody that holds this abhorrent view. It shows, if you ask me, how far that once mighty British institution has actually fallen. Who wants this? Who is demanding this kind of content? Who is saying, look, I pay my 150 odd quid every single year in annual subscription to the BBC that I'm forced to pay for with the threat of prison, by the way, to hear this unadulterated filth. It is disgusting. And actually, I'm not convinced that that's not rape, Jess.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're unconscious, how are you able to consent? This whole um this whole nonsense of positivity, sex empowerment, is it really empowerment when at the end of the day the woman feels completely used and abandoned when it comes to something like this, which is completely atrocious? Why is the BBC promoting this? Or even things like OnlyFans, as you discussed, or even just this hookup culture, which does absolutely nothing for women. It just makes them feel so used. This is what we're teaching young girls, and it's awful.
No, it is, and I think you're absolutely right to raise the question of feminism, right? Because some feminists, no doubt, like the guest that the BBC had on, if this individual, self describes themselves as a feminist, they self describe themselves as being non-binary, but whatever else they want to describe themselves as, whatever floats your boat. But you cannot convince a generation of young women that it's all right for a bloke to pay to drug them so that they can have their wicked way with them, and think that that is all right in any decent society, such as what I thought the British society was. And the BBC certainly shouldn't be platforming this kind of rhetoric and idea of what society should look like. It goes so far against the BBC's stated aims, which are written into statute, Jess, of education, entertainment, and a whole host of things that as I say, we're forced to pay for. It's not entertainment to have this kind of advocacy on the British airwaves. It's not education, certainly not education, to convince these young girls that their bodies should be used and abused in this vile way, potentially violent way, Jess. The whole narrative of the BBC during the #MeToo discussion and others, liberal-minded commentators, was that this should never happen again. Well, I'm sorry, but suggesting that this kind of thing is okay to discuss on what I assume was primetime television, that's not what the Me Too movement should have led to, is it, Jess? It strikes me as a distortion, a perversion of feminism. not the modern day enlightened version of what it should or could have been.